Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. Today, as we record, it marks 2 years since the horrific massacre perpetrated by the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates on Israel's western Negev communities, as well as the military units protecting them, and a ceasefire deal, which includes a release of all remaining hostages, is seemingly closer than ever before. Israeli, Egyptian, Qatari, and the Islamist Hamas delegations are currently ironing out the details involved in President Trump's 21-point framework proposal, with results expected within the next few days. Should the deal indeed be signed, what would the implications be for Israel's national security interests vis-a-vis Gaza, the broader Palestinian issue, and beyond? Joining us for these analysis include retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly a U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. It's great to see you, General.
Great to see you, Jonathan.
It's a pleasure indeed. Also joining us is Brigadier General in Reserve, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, who is the president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, formerly the Director General of Israel's Ministry for Strategic Affairs, as well as the head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Division. It's great to see you as well, General.
My pleasure.
And I'd like to start by asking you, General Cooper-Wasser, when I look at the details of the outline by President Trump to this 21-point plan, the first 5 points articulate the essence of the START, which is currently being negotiated as we speak in the Egyptian resort sea town of Sharm el-Sheikh, which includes Gaza will be de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefits of its people. If both sides agree to the proposal, the war will immediately end with Israeli forces halting all operations and gradually withdrawing from the Gaza Strip. Within 48 hours of Israel publicly accepting the deal, all living and diseased hostages will be returned. And once the hostages are returned, Israel will free several hundred Palestinian security prisoners serving life sentences and over 1,000 Gazans arrested since the war started, along with the bodies of several hundred Palestinians. I'm going through the details, and I'm asking myself, first, is this a viable reality to be had in broader terms? And secondly, they already breached it since Israel has already accepted it publicly, and the implementation outlined is something that is expected now, according to the United States, to occur within 72 hours after 48 hours already expiring in the onset.
Well, it's not going to be easy to get to the point where this plan is going to be implemented, because Hamas said yes to some of the articles that comprise the plan, but didn't say yes, and eventually one can hear spokespeople from Hamas speaking against quite few of the other articles that are part of the plan. And you cannot accept just those articles that you want and ignore the others or reject the others. And in order for Gaza to be de-radicalized, in order for Gaza not to be a basis for terrorism against Israel, Hamas has to agree to be disarmed. They have to agree to lay down their arms. And this is not yet in the cards. And what we hear from Hamas is that they have a lot of conditions, and actually they say no. So what happened was that President Trump and Israel decided to listen to the yes, of the yes but part of Hamas response. And we are now moving forward with the question of the hostages, because this is the first chapter of the implementation of the plan. And if this is going to be working out, it's a good start. But we have to remember the Palestinian terror group called Hamas is not in the mood of accepting the demand to disarm and to allow international forces to enter Gaza and to deliver the control of Gaza really to the hands of others who are not Hamas, who are not controlled by Hamas. this is not yet the case. And the reason they refuse to do that is that they understand that if they do that, they will actually admit that the 7th of October was a mistake, maybe even a huge mistake, strategically speaking. And they cannot afford accepting this demand from the United States and Israel to accept that the 7th of October was a mistake, because this is the essence of the confrontation between Israel and the Hamas today is how the 7th of October is going to go down in the history, in the ethos of the Palestinian people. That's the main issue now. And they want to avoid being seen as bringing a disaster and a catastrophe for the Palestinians. Although this is the case, they have already brought about a disaster on the Palestinians, but they do not want to accept it.
General Kemet, as General Kupel-Vessel just mentioned, the Islamist Hamas has mentioned, yes, but, and there are plenty of revisions in the document that President Trump's team outlined to the Palestinians, demanding that they say yes. The focus is on the yes, since the but does indeed omit many of the demands that the United States and Israel have placed forward. Therefore, when I ask myself as to whether or not the United States can demand that Hamas does indeed fulfill all of the criteria in order to bring about such a desired deal, to bring an end to the war, of course, which is something that is internationally aspired to, I have a hard time either accepting or rather believing that when President Trump says, and I quote, "I have red lines. If certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well." And then he goes on to say that Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important. It seems to be one outspoken line of messaging as opposed to reality on the ground at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, Jonathan, first of all, I'd like to offer my condolences to all those families who 2 years ago got the worst possible news they could ever imagine. They have suffered for the last 2 years, and particularly those who don't have their sons and daughters back, their brothers and sisters, their husbands. It's just a tragedy. Jonathan, you and I are always in sync on the issue of Hamas, particularly the issue of their demobilization, disarmament. It's unlikely to happen. I think what we're seeing now is that President Trump is doing the right thing. He's pushing this hard, but he's selling a car that doesn't have an engine. The fact remains is, as General Kupavasser said, there is no motivation for Hamas to give up their weapons. And in fact, the worst possible thing could be for them to put up their weapons. I was on a show earlier today where people were talking about that they could do with Hamas, which is done in Tunisia when they de-radicalize their terrorists. I've got to think long and hard to find any group as a whole, perhaps Sendero Luminoso in South America, who actually renounced their terrorist backing, renounced their terrorist intention, and actually put down their weapons and reintegrated. I would note, however, that those that did it in South America, also in Nicaragua, did not have the ideology that we're seeing among the Islamic terrorists. They had radical communists and socialists, but certainly not a ideology that was based on religious beliefs to keep them going. So, look, I think all three of us on this show would love to be proven wrong, but sadly, I think history is going to prove us right.
Sadly, yes. Let's bring another skeptic into this picture. The Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesman earlier today came out, namely Majid al-Ansari, and stated that they don't see themselves as being too optimistic, neither too pessimistic in their wording, but nonetheless, they're not optimistic about seeing an outcome since they view the implementation of the outline to be a tough sell. They also claim that Hamas has accepted the deal, despite the fact that Hamas has not accepted most relevant and important clauses of this outline. And therefore, when I look at this broader picture, does this not bring the Arab and Islamic world that vouched for Hamas to accept such a deal into a very tough position to continue to support them out in the open at a time when they did supposedly put their foot down, claiming they are able to leverage their way into a change of discourse? General Kupilvasu?
Well, definitely the Arab mediators and the mediators in general, and including the Arab, are in a very complicated situation because they gave a promise to President Trump that they are going to support the deal and bring the bride, and they will bring Hamas. And it turns out that they took upon themselves this commitment without getting the promise of Hamas to actually do that. And now they are trying to somehow get away with it by saying, "Oh, there are problems and it's complicated." Of course, it's complicated for all the good reasons that we mentioned already. But this is their task, not to come up with excuses for Hamas, but to convince Hamas to accept the deal. Otherwise, they were actually cheating the President of the United States. And we know how sensitive presidents of the United States can become if they are cheated. Ask Arafat about it. So that's where we stand. And yes, they have a lot of leverage in Washington, but eventually they have to deliver. And that's why I expect both Qatar and Turkey to put a lot of pressure on Hamas to accept at least the first stage, the stage of the releasing of the hostages, which is less problematic, although it is problematic, but it's less problematic from the phase of laying down their arms. And if they manage to do that, then it's already some promise fulfilled. And this promise for President Trump is the most important one in my mind, because he keeps speaking all the time about the suffering of the families of the hostages, and both those who are alive and those who are dead. And he definitely wants to see that done. And also the timetable is important for him because on the 10th of in a couple of days, on the 10th of October, there's going to be the announcement about who is the next laureate of the Nobel Peace Prize. So he wants them to deliver. They would put some pressure on Hamas, and the main pressure on Hamas, by the way, is not what the mediators are going to say. The main pressure on Hamas is that Israel says, with the backing of the United States, that if they are not going to deliver on all of the matters that are included in the deal, and first and foremost on the issue of the hostages, then the military effort is going to be resumed, and we shall remove Hamas from power by force, with the backing of the United States, which was questionable when we were moving there in the first place. But now there's going to be full support of the United States for this move, and this is what bothers Hamas more than anything else. Let's wait and see. I'm hopeful that at least the hostages part of the deal will be implemented, and then we'll see what's going to happen with the rest of it.
Well, General Kimmett, I'd like to return to the statement made earlier today by the foreign ministry spokesman of Qatar, when he highlighted that, the plan explicitly states that handing over the hostages will be an end to the war, and that the Qataris are committed to this, that the United States has said that it is committed, that all the parties ultimately are brought together into this, and that they themselves are committed to this. But a reporter asked him subsequently that there are fears, obviously, that once the hostages are delivered to Israel, that the war would resume. And it seems like the Qatari answer was that they all have this fear, indicating that there is a very low trust in those Arab circles, including in Qatar, of the United States, irrespective of its capacity to show quite clearly that it has sway over Israel when it comes to operational proceedings. Uh, what are we to take out of that? Is that indeed, as General Kupilvasil mentioned, preparing the ground, so to speak, for the failure of Hamas to comply with the demand of all the Arab and Muslim nations?
Well, first of all, let's make sure we get the article right in terms of the sentence structure. It says it'll be the end of the war. What it should be saying is it will be the end of this war. Invariably, Israel will go back to national defense and protection of its borders. But I think that everybody would probably acknowledge that there will be another war in the future as long as Hamas exists as a capability inside of Gaza. And for that matter, Hezbollah continues to exist and grow in southern Lebanon. So, look, I think we should all understand that the best we can get out of this deal, the best that Israel can get out of this deal, is the return of all their hostages. Even that, I think, is going to be problematic because as Hamas chips away at the different parts of the plan, and then there's general disagreement with the chipping away, then they will renegotiate the number of hostages they will return. Again, I hope I'm wrong with all of this, but I'm trying to think about this through the eyes, ears, and brains of Hamas. You were asking them to demobilize, demilitarize, disarm, and somehow reintegrate themselves into a society that no doubt will take revenge on them 6 months from now as the people of Gaza truly recognize who caused this war, who caused this destruction that they see in every street corner. And now those guys no longer have a group nor the weapons to defend themselves. It would look like the Quislings in after World War II that were hunted down by their own people and killed. So it just doesn't add up to me. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there are smarter people out there than me. But I've seen a generation of Middle East negotiators in America continue to claim victory, and all I see is ashes.
General Kupilvasil, General Kimmett does provide some very valid points. We are well rehearsed with Arab culture and the clan construct that makes up much of Gaza, be it the Gaza Strip at large, Gaza City in particular, as well as the various tribes that are operating there. The Islamist Hamas is merely families and clans that banded together and pledged allegiance to the Muslim Brotherhood in a quest to eradicate the state of Israel. And were they to diminish their power, namely of those specific clans, they will face the rules of the Arab Street, which in the context of Gaza is not very forgiving.
Well, I'm not sure this is the case. We still have to go through. There are certain forces in Gaza that may emerge as anti-Hamas and will also criticize Hamas for what they did. But and some of them are already active now and cooperate with Israel. We have some clans both in Rafah and in Khan Yunis that cooperate with Israel and are anti-Hamas, and we even cooperate in fighting Hamas. That's happening. But most of the population in Gaza still sees Hamas as a force for the good, and the good is eliminating Israel. That's what they want to see happening. They were brainwashed that this is the reason, the raison d'etre of the Palestinians for so many years, both by the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas, that for them to look at Hamas because they launched a terror attack against Israel as the wrong side. It might happen when eventually we shall have the de-radicalization accomplished, but we are not there yet. So in my mind, we still have a long way to go before we get there. So Hamas believes that the people of Gaza support him, and there are many people in Gaza supporting him. Many people in Gaza still consider the 7th of October as a courageous and respectable action. That's the way they look at it. And it raised their morale, and they still remember that it's only 2 years from that. Yes, much damage was happening in Gaza since then, and some people had some process of soul searching, but most of them are afraid to do that. And so I'm thinking that Hamas built on the ability to get public support even after the deal is denied, or we move only on part of it with the hostages release. The question is, how strong is the pressure from Qatar and Turkey is going to be, and how strong is the pressure of the knowing of that they are going to face the IDF force if they refuse. That's what keeps them cautious to not say out loudly that they are against accepting the deal. And we will have to see it. We have to make sure that they are realized, and the Americans have to say it repeatedly, as they did, that if Hamas refuses not only to the release of the hostages, but also to laying down their arms and allowing the rest of the articles of the plan to be implemented, they have to realize that if this is not going to happen, and they refuse to do that, Israel is going to get the green light from the American administration to finish the job. These are the words of President Trump. Finish the job. And that is the most powerful leverage over Hamas.
Absolutely. Well, in this context, we don't have very much time left, and I would like to hear both of your perspectives with regard to a day after Hamas says no. How does that look like, General Kimmett?
Well, the first thing I would say is that, in fact, President Trump will say, okay, you guys got it. I'm not going to hold you back. Let us give you more equipment. I think the one country that we have not discussed in this entire conversation is Iran. And it will be interesting to see if Iran doubles down on their support for Hamas, if they're able to double down on their support for Hamas, even if it's nothing more than rhetorical support for Hamas. But I think that, unfortunately, the day after Hamas says no is what Gaza has looked like for the last 1.5 years as combat operations have gone on in there. More death, more destruction. Still not enough intel to either go after the remaining hostages or to go after them with sufficient assurance you're not going to lose 25 in the process to gain one. So I don't expect the day after is going to look much look much better than when Steve Witkoff came out and said we have a plan.
General Kupilvasa, your take on that, and in that context also, to what degree does Israel have the public's backing in light of a Hamas decision to say no, not necessarily verbally, but in practice?
If Hamas refuses to move forward and along the articles of the plan, I think there's going to be a relatively wide support in Israel for resuming the military offensive and taking over Gaza Strip. And the one thing that we were trying to avoid by allowing this plan to move forward, which is the need to establish civil administration under the military, under the IDF in Gaza, more people are going to be ready to accept it. That's not a good option for Israel. That's why we prefer reaching the deal with an alternative to civil administration, but Israeli civil administration. But if there's not going to be readiness on behalf of Hamas to accept it, there's not going to be any other option but to do that. And I'm afraid that this is the more plausible option. And more destruction, as General Kimmett said, and more damage to the Palestinians living in Gaza. But the people of Israel will support it. There are some people who will say, "Let's give up." We always have this group that says, "Let's give up," especially the families of the hostages. But it makes no sense to give up when you have the green light of the American administration to finish this job. And there's no way we are going to leave Hamas in power in Gaza. This is not going to happen, in my mind, not under this government. We're not going to leave Hamas in power in Gaza. And if it's not possible to remove them from power through diplomatic means, then it's going to be through military means. I would say a word about what General Kimmich said, mentioned the Iranian role. The Iranians are in a very bad situation right now because of the snapback and other reasons. And their ability to threaten the West directly is not very impressive. So we have to look at be careful about the possibility that the Iranians will try to intervene, and because of their own calculations, will threaten or even use their capabilities, which is mainly the use of long-range missiles, heavy missiles, and launch something towards Israel. We have to be on alert for that eventuality.
Absolutely. Need to be ready for that type of situation. But the Iranians, I do believe that they understand that in the event that they launch any type of attack, the consequences thereof would be so far reaching that the regime will have a hard time standing on its 2 feet moving forward. General Kimmich, last sentence.
Be prepared for disappointment.
Indeed. Well, that speaks loud, and it is quite clear. I'd like to thank General Kimmich and General Kupelwasser for all of your insights today. And I'd like to thank also all of you at home to once again also join General Kimmich and I'm sure also General Kupelwasser in mentioning our heartfelt condolences and prayers and encouragement to the families of all those who've lost so many during those 2 past years, and also to wish you Chag Sukkot Sameach during this week from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.